Good day, ladies and gentlemen. Today's video is part 7 in our Deuteronomy 28 punishments in the Septuagint. Let's begin, shall we? Quote, "The Lord smite thee with an evil sore on the knees and the legs, so that thou shalt not be able to be healed from the sole of thy foot to the crown of thy head." Stop! Allow me to ask you a question, gentle strangers. Do you remember or recall a sickness or disease of this nature talked about in slavery all the way up until the 1960s? I stopped at the 60s era for a good reason. But before I tell you why, let's make a deal. Whether you believe me or not, you cannot dispute the compound probability of all the punishments we have read so far, matching the modern era of the so-called African Americans in the Americas. My deal is, if I can prove yet again this punishment yet again afflicts a majority of the so-called African Americans in this dispensation, will you finally understand what you perceive as progress is nothing more than a mixture of different abominations? I'm talking about witchcrafts, sorceries, pharmakia, etc. crafted, as my boy liked to say, in an all-hands-on-deck approach. Meaning, if we are truly in the end days, why would the evildoers leave any device on the table of possibilities? Basically, they are throwing in the kitchen sink. Why? To give you the perception of advancements, of course. But all righteous indicators point to a decline into the abyss. Do we have a deal? Cool. This disease affects millions of African Americans today. Not that it's a new one at all. The ancient Egyptians called it, quote, too great emptying of the urine. The Indian physicians around the same time called it honey urine, noting the urine will attract ants. Have you guessed it yet? Right. I'm talking about diabetes. According to the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services Offices of Minority Health under Diabetes and African Americans, quote, African Americans are almost twice as likely to be diagnosed with diabetes as non-Hispanic whites. In addition, they are more likely to suffer complications from diabetes, such as end-stage renal disease and lower extremity amputations. Stop! I don't know about you, but amputation takes care of the, quote, evil sores on the knees and the legs, so that thou shalt not be able to be healed from the sole of thy foot part. But check out how Yah puts his mark on his people. What mark am I talking about, you ask? Didn't Yah say he was going to put us at distress, among other things? Surely, if Yah is throwing down on us like this for punishments, our punishment will hit us unlike hitting any other people upon the planet. Right? Going outside the laws of our physical understanding to basically let us know it's him that causes us distress. Am I right? All right, let's continue. Quote, although African Americans have the same or lower rate of high cholesterol as their non-Hispanic white counterparts, they are more likely to have high blood pressure. African American adults are 60% more likely than non-Hispanic white adults to have been diagnosed with diabetes by a physician. In 2010, non-Hispanic blacks were 3.4 times more likely to be diagnosed with end-stage renal disease as compared to non-Hispanic whites. In 2012, non-Hispanic blacks were 3.5 times more likely to be hospitalized for lower limb amputations as compared to non-Hispanic whites. In 2013, African Americans were twice as likely as non-Hispanic whites to die from diabetes. Example. People, please understand something. These statistics are not based on our ratio of population. So if we are twice as likely to die from one of the most common disease, 60% more likely to get the disease, 3.4 times more likely to have renal failure, which causes death without getting a transplant, mind you, 3.5 times more likely to get our legs and toes cut off than the white man whose numbers are 3 times ours? That's ya! But wait! To further the affliction of understanding that we are still, or should I say in the main phase of the punishments of Yah, and having overcome, thus making videos about keys of success in Babylon under the punishments. Check out how everything I have said thus far about being tricked into thinking prosperity, when in fact we are in the furnace of affliction, rings true. According to Google, when I asked what percentage of America is African American, perceive the answer I received. Quote, it said, 12.3%. There are 40 million black Americans on the eve of the 2010 census. They are 12.3% of the U.S. population, down from 14.8% of the population in 2000. This can only mean, even though we see little nigglets running everywhere, more of us are dying off than are being replaced. And as you can see, at an alarming rate. Whoa, one at a time. The mind meld is strong with you. What? I know I stopped short of explaining the entire prophecy earlier. I did it for a reason. You didn't let me finish. Okay, let's read it again in its entirety for clarity, decency, and order. Quote, the Lord smite thee with an evil sore on the knees and on the legs, so that thou shalt not be able to be healed from the sole of thy foot to the crown of thy head. Example. Okay, we just went over the knees and legs part, but what about the sole of thy foot to the crown of thy head part? According to the American Diabetes Association, under skin complications, quote, diabetes can affect every part of the body, including the skin. Some of these problems are skin conditions anyone can have, but people with diabetes get them easily. These include bacterial infections, fungal infections, and itching, another punishment of the botch of Egypt we read in earlier videos. Other skin problems happen mostly or only to people with diabetes. These include diabetic dermopathy, something with the word necro in it, so we know it can't be good, diabetic blisters, and eruptive xanomatosis. Damn. Example. Okay. By now, I am sure the images provided has grossed you out. People, this is what I am sparing you from reading about. And as you can plainly see, the sores are from the sole of their foot to the crown of their head, just like the scriptures told it would be. But y'all know my style. I wouldn't be me if I didn't try to make the chicks say, ooh. According to that same reference material under necrobiosis, Lipoidica, diabetic which is NLD. That's how we're going to say it. It's NLD. Quote, NLD causes spots similar to diabetic dermopathy. That's it. But they are fewer, larger, and deeper. NLD often starts as a dull red raised area. After a while, it looks like a shiny scar with a violet border. The blood vessels under the skin may become easier to see. Sometimes NLD is itchy and painful. Sometimes the spots crack open. Adult women are most likely to get it. As long as the sores do not break open, you do not need to have it treated. But if they get open sores, see a doctor for treatment. Example. Okay, summary. Yah said, quote, the Lord smite thee with an evil sore on the knees and on the legs, so that thou shalt not be able to be healed from the sole of thy foot to the crown of thy head. And modern medicine attests, so-called African Americans suffer from a disease that matches perfectly with the descriptions of the effects just mentioned. And though African Americans have either the same amount or lower diabetes causing carcinogens in their bodies, the rate of diagnosis among African Americans to the rest of the population is, well, out of this freaking world and defies the law of compound probability. That can only mean this modern scourge of scurvy upon the so-called African Americans is being directed by something not of this physical world. And his name is Yah. Thank you for looking at this video and look for the next.